But in terms of the sort of issues, a good foundation for reporting is the previous recommendations that have been brought. And that's because it is such a circular, ongoing process, and it's a process about looking at what the government has been doing and what gaps are still remaining and what still needs to be done, which Michael said earlier. So we've just kind of summarised, did Michael read that out? Summarised the kind of gist of the recommendations from the committees that were specifically relate to Māori. And our next activities, we'd like to get you in groups and start a bit of discussion and a bit of more substantive discussion about those as a starting point. Did Michael just talk about these? No? Okay. So the sort of a summary of the key issues specifically relating to Māori that have been raised by these committees already in the past relate to, and Karen mentioned these earlier, legal and constitutional recognition and protection of the Treaty and of Indigenous rights. That's one. Another one is the need, a whole lot of things around treaty settlement and treaty claim processes, particularly around redress and around the powers of the Waitangi Tribunal and government responses to the tribunal. That's the second one. A third is around consultation and participation. There's a whole bundle of things wrapped up in that. And issues around what processes there are for consultation, and the issue of free, prior and informed consent when government actions, law, policy impact on Māori land and Māori rights to land. Another area or theme that the committees have been concerned about and made recommendations about is the need for greater protection of culture and language, and that's things like education, whakapapa, reo, all those things. Another sort of area is around rights to land and resources, and there's also recommendations around climate change that came out of the UNDRIP Children's Rights Committee just recently. Another big area, which may be the area that you're mostly working with, around things like education, employment, health, justice, and an adequate standard of living, things like housing, food, all those sort of things, and the inequalities and disadvantage that Māori experience in those areas. And then another key area of recommendations is around preventing violence against Māori women and children. So those are kind of the broad themes of the recommendations that have been made in the past. And they're a really good foundation to build on. Again, it's that idea of consistency among the treaty bodies, water on a stone, continually reiterating to get traction and to get movement, playing the long game really.